Can you imagine being accused of laziness by your own father, right after paying the mortgage on his house? That's exactly what happened to me. My name's Emma, and for years, I convinced myself that sacrificing for my family was love, until one night in our kitchen shattered that illusion. What would you do if your parents treated you like a burden while secretly living off your hard-earned money? Stick around. This is the story of how I discovered the betrayal buried in bank statements, and the choice that finally set me free. I knew the fight was brewing the moment I heard the spoon clatter into the empty cereal bowl. Dad's temper always started small, just loud enough to warn, just sharp enough to hush. "You think just going to work makes you special, Emma?" he spat, not looking at me as he scrubbed a plate like it had personally offended him. "This house is a mess. Lily's still in school, and somehow she's the one picking up more than you." Lily, my 17-year-old sister, didn't even flinch. She stayed glued to her phone, thumbs tapping some endless scroll, her cereal untouched. She didn't glance up. She didn't need to. She knew I'd defend myself. I always did. I took a breath. I was already in my work apron, still smelling like fryer oil, my socks damp from spilled dishwater. I hadn't even sat down. "I work 10-hour shifts," I said, voice low but steady. "I pay the mortgage, I bought the groceries you're eating." Mom didn't lift her eyes from the sink. She moved quietly beside Dad, wiping a spotless counter. "That's not the point," she murmured. "You live here, don't you?" I felt something crack in me, something small but important. "No," I said, more to myself than them. "Apparently I don't." Silence. Dad turned then, face flushed and damp with heat. "Don't you get smart with me. You think you're some kind of hero because you pay some bills. That's your responsibility. You owe this family." "Oh," the word hit like a slap. "I'm 25, Dad. I work 60 hours a week and hand over half my paycheck. What exactly do I still owe?" Lily laughed softly, one of those smug little chuckles she thought I couldn't hear. My chest burned. The air in the kitchen was thick. It smelled like garlic and sour milk and resentment. I gripped the counter behind me, my fingers aching. "Not doing this," I whispered. "Not tonight." I turned and walked out, slow and shaking. Behind me, chairs scraped and voices rose again, but I didn't listen. In the hallway, past the peeling family photo and the lamp I bought that nobody dusted, I let the tears fall. Quiet, angry ones. The kind you don't wipe away. I paused at the foot of the stairs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg for someone to understand. But I was done performing for a family that saw me as a wallet with arms. Instead, I whispered the only truth I could bear to hear out loud. "I'm getting out." And this time, I meant it. The next morning, the kitchen still smelled like last night's bitterness. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't ask if they wanted coffee. I slipped out before the sun finished stretching. The diner opened at 6, but I liked getting there early. Before the eggs started hissing and the grill roared to life, there was a stillness to that place I couldn't find anywhere else. It smelled like hope and burnt toast, familiar, honest, unpretending. "Morning, Em," barked Gus, my boss, as I slipped through the back. Gus had been running the Parkway Diner for longer than I'd been alive. A gruff man with a face like a sourdough roll, tough and warm depending on the day. "You're early." I shrugged off my jacket and tied my apron. "I needed the quiet." He nodded. "Good, because Gina called out again." My heart didn't even flinch. "Put me down for the double." He raised a brow. "You sure? That's a 14-hour day." I was already sliding into my prep station, pulling onions and peppers from the cooler. "More hours mean more tips. I'm saving for a place." That got his attention. Gus leaned against the freezer door, arms folded. "You finally moving out of that snake pit?" The way he said it wasn't cruel, just factual. Like he'd known all along I didn't belong there. Maybe he had. "Trying," I said, dicing onions like they owed me money. "I've got some savings. If I keep up these shifts, I could be out in a month, maybe less." He grunted in approval, then tossed a dish towel over his shoulder. "You let me know if you need a reference. Or a truck." It hit me then, how this chaotic kitchen with its dented pans and grease-smudged walls felt more like home than my own living room. Gus, with his burnt coffee and soft heart. Rosa, the server who always brought me orange juice when I looked tired. Even the busted jukebox in the corner that only played 80s country. All of it imperfect and real. As the breakfast rush hit, I lost myself in the rhythm. Pancakes flipped, bacon popped, orders were shouted over the clang of plates. My hands moved without thinking. My mind, for once, was quiet. Hours passed like minutes. It was just after 2 when I finally caught a breath. I slumped on the milk crate behind the diner, sipping cold cola and checking my bank app on my phone. My fingers trembled as the number loaded. $3,478.69. I exhaled. Rent for the studio apartment I'd seen online was $725. First, last, and a security deposit would leave me scraping by, but I could do it, especially with overtime, especially if I stayed strong. I started calculating on a napkin, the kind with greasy fingerprints and ketchup smears. Rent, groceries, bus fare. I could even swing thrift store furniture and a cheap mattress if I kept up doubles for the next few weeks. For the first time in a long while, the math didn't depress me. It gave me wings. As I folded the napkin and tucked it into my coat pocket, I felt a shift inside. Not a big one, just enough to breathe differently. I wasn't stuck. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't theirs anymore. Back inside, Gus handed me a new ticket. He eyed me carefully. "You okay?" I smiled, not wide, but real. "Yeah, actually, I think I'm gonna be." 2 weeks. That's how long I gave myself. 14 days of extra shifts, instant noodles, budgeting down to the cent. My eyes were puffy most mornings from too little sleep and too many calculations, but the numbers worked. Barely. I had just enough. On the morning of day 15, I signed the lease on a studio apartment above a laundromat. It was small, smelled faintly of detergent and old tile, but it had a lock that was mine, a window with morning light, and a kitchen big enough for exactly one person to dance in. It was perfect. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops, but instead I went home one last time to pack. That night I didn't tiptoe. I walked through the front door like I had nothing left to hide, because I didn't. My body was tired, my spirit raw, but for the first time in years I had something stronger than fear. I had a plan. Dinner was already on the table when I walked in. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, overcooked green beans. Mom had her church lady smile on, the kind she used when company came over or when something was about to go very, very wrong. "Emma, good," she said. "Sit down." Dad didn't look up from his plate. Lily scrolled silently, earbuds in. I sat. And for a moment I let the illusion play out, the four of us, quiet, polite, performing normal, until I broke it. "I'm moving out," I said simply. Mom blinked. Dad's fork froze mid-air. Lily kept scrolling. I cleared my throat, steadier now. "I signed a lease. I found a studio apartment. I move tomorrow." The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It roared. Then Mom spoke, soft like poison wrapped in lace. "You're doing what?" "I'm moving out," I repeated. "I've saved. I've planned. It's time." Dad set his fork down slowly. "You think you can just walk away from this family?" My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not walking away. I'm building something for myself." "And what about the mortgage?" he growled. "You think those bills pay themselves?" My throat burned. "You told me I owed this family. I paid every month. I did my part. But respect is a two-way street, and I'm done begging for it." Mom's smile vanished. Her voice cracked with rage. "If you leave, Emma, you're no longer part of this family." The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they shocked me, because they didn't. They just confirmed what I already knew. Love in this house was transactional. And the minute I stopped paying, I stopped belonging. I stood. "I'll come back for the rest of my things tomorrow," I said, picking up my small overnight bag from the floor. "But I'm not staying another night here." Lily finally looked up. Her eyes flickered, unreadable. She said nothing. Dad scoffed. "Go ahead. Let's see how long you last out there without us." I looked him dead in the eye. "I've already lasted this long because of you, not with you." I walked out, chest pounding, legs shaky. But I didn't stop. Not when I heard Mom calling after me. Not when Dad slammed his palm on the table. Not even when Lily whispered something behind me I couldn't make out. I got in my car and didn't cry until I hit the end of the street. That night I slept on my friend Becca's lumpy pull-out couch. She de-welcomed me with open arms and a can of soda and made no comments when I cried into her blanket for a solid 15 minutes. She just sat next to me, scrolling apartments on her laptop, whispering, "You did the hard part, the worst part. Now it gets better." And somewhere deep inside, I believed her, because this wasn't the end. It was the first breath of something entirely new. There's something about safety that you don't realize you've been missing until you finally feel it. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's the sound of Becca boiling water for ramen at midnight, humming badly to a Taylor Swift song. Sometimes, it's a futon that sags in the middle but feels like heaven because no one's yelling behind a hallway door. That night, I slept for 10 straight hours. When I woke, I didn't panic. There was no rush to dodge Dad's questions or brace for Mom's cold shoulder. No passive-aggressive silence from Lily. Just the smell of cinnamon oatmeal and Becca's head popping around the corner with her messy bun and a goofy grin. "Morning, Rebel." I sat up, hair in my face. "Morning. You snored like a tractor, by the way," she teased, tossing a pair of mismatched socks at me. "But you earned it." Becca and I met at the diner 3 years ago when she spilled a tray of orange juice across a customer's lap and didn't stop laughing for 5 minutes. She was everything I wasn't, bold, messy, unfiltered. But somehow we'd clicked. She left the diner last year to start cosmetology school, but we stayed close. When I showed up at her door with a duffel bag and tear-streaked cheeks, she didn't ask for an explanation. She just said, "Took you long enough." Her apartment was tiny and full of personality. There were fairy lights dangling across the windows, plants hanging in macrame holders, and posters from indie concerts I'd never heard of. She shared it with her cousin, Mariah, who was out of town for the week, giving us space. That morning, we sat cross-legged on the floor, oatmeal in mismatched bowls between us, and scrolled through apartment listings. "Okay, listen," Becca said, her spoon pointing like a sword. "You need 3 things. A lock that works, a bathroom with a door that closes, and a vibe that doesn't scream serial killer lair. Everything else is negotiable." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. "What about a fridge that doesn't smell like 2009? I asked. She snorted. "Optional." We clicked through one listing after another. Some were laughably out of budget. One had carpeted walls. One had a bathtub in the middle of the kitchen. But then we saw it. A small studio just 5 minutes from the diner. Hardwood floors, a little kitchenette, exposed brick, and a bay window with a seat. No frills, but the kind of charm that made you want to light a candle and play sad girl music. Becca leaned in. "Oh, this is a main character apartment." I smiled, heart fluttering. "It's in my budget." "Then let's call right now." I hesitated. "Shouldn't I think it through?" She raised an eyebrow. "Emma, you've been thinking it through for 25 years. Book the tour." So I did. The rest of the day, we reorganized my plans. Becca helped me make a list of furniture I'd need, and we mapped out nearby thrift stores. She even offered to drive her dad's pickup on moving day. That night, we shared a pizza on the fire escape, our legs dangling into the dusk, the city buzzing below like a low lullaby. I told her everything, things I hadn't said out loud, even to myself. How I'd always felt like a tenant in my own home. How I'd convinced myself that being dutiful was the same as being loved. How every mortgage payment felt like I was buying space in a family that never really saw me. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix it. She just sat with me, nodding, letting me say all the words I'd swallowed for years. "You're not crazy," she said at one point, soft and steady. "They gaslit the hell out of you, but you're not crazy, you're brave." I didn't know how to respond, so I just said thank you. The stars blinked above us, faint behind the city haze, and for the first time I didn't feel like I was stealing rest. I was claiming it. The key was small, scratched around the edges, a silver oval with no charm or color, just plain and solid. But when I turned it in the lock of apartment 2B, it clicked like a promise. My new home smelled like dust and old wood and sunshine trapped in glass. The floor creaked beneath my sneakers. The window rattled slightly with the afternoon breeze. There was no furniture, no curtains. Just a tiny kitchen, a bathroom the size of a closet, and a main room that held infinite possibility. It was perfect. Becca helped me carry up the mattress we'd wrestled from the back of her dad's. It took both of us, a whole lot of grunting, and one accidental tumble that left us laughing breathless in the stairwell. We didn't have a bed frame yet, but the floor worked fine. By late afternoon, we'd hauled up 3 milk crates, a folding table from Goodwill, and a faded blue armchair that still smelled like someone's grandmother. I cleaned every inch, on hands and knees, not because it was filthy, but because it was mine. I scrubbed the baseboards, wiped down the cabinets, and even polished the rusty towel rack in the bathroom like it was gold. It felt sacred. That night, Becca stayed for takeout and a victory toast with off-brand soda in plastic cups. We sat cross-legged on the mattress in the middle of my new room, greasy cartons between us. "You did it," she said, lifting her cup. "To Emma, the freest woman in zip code 28,214. I laughed, the sound bouncing off empty walls. "It's small. It's yours." And that was the difference. After she left, I locked the door behind her, double-checked it twice. I dimmed the single lamp I'd bought at a yard sale and stood in the middle of my apartment, listening to the kind of silence I hadn't known existed. No footsteps above me, no creaking doors down the hall, no voices rising in the next room, just the occasional hum of traffic and the gentle clank of pipes reminding me I wasn't entirely alone, but alone enough. I sat in the armchair and pulled the thrifted blanket over my knees. For a while, I didn't do anything. I didn't check my phone. I didn't plan tomorrow. I just sat. And it was beautiful. I didn't cry, not then. But something in me softened like a knot untangling in my chest. A quiet knowing that I'd crossed some invisible bridge. I wasn't under their roof anymore. I wasn't performing, pleasing, surviving. I was choosing. I stood and went to the window. The city spread below me like a lullaby, neon signs blinking, car horns humming softly in the distance. I opened the window wide and let the air hit me. Fresh, cool, free. Then I grabbed a pen and the last napkin from our takeout bag and scribbled down words I hadn't dared say out loud. This is not temporary. This is the start. I pinned it to the wall beside my mattress. And I slept. No interruptions. No glares, no dreams of disappointment, just sleep. The real kind. The days passed in a quiet rhythm, each one painting over the chaos I'd come from. I'd wake up to sunlight spilling across the hardwood. No alarms, no stomping in the hall. No dad's muttering or mom's judgmental sighs drifting under the door. Just morning. At the diner, I worked my shifts with a new kind of ease. I laughed more. I snapped less. Even Gus noticed. "You've been smiling at the toast again," he said one morning. "That means either you finally got laid or something big changed." I just winked and flipped another pancake. Let's just say my mornings start a lot quieter these days. Most nights I came home with leftovers and a smile, kicked off my shoes, and wandered barefoot around my little place like it was a palace. I decorated slowly, bit by bit. A lamp from a garage sale, a pillow from Becca's thrift dive, a chipped coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Cook." It was enough, more than enough. But around the fourth night, something shifted. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the fridge my only company. The piece that had wrapped around me like a soft blanket began to feel tight, like it was holding something in. It started with a sentence, one I hadn't dared say when I still lived under their roof. They didn't care. It echoed in my head. They didn't care. Not about the hours I worked, the sleep I lost, the years I handed over paycheck after paycheck, believing I was helping, contributing, being the good daughter. Mom's voice from that night rang out in memory. "If you leave, you're no longer part of this family." Had it always been that conditional? The bills, the groceries, the so-called mortgage help. I sat up. For the first time since moving in, I opened my laptop and pulled up my online banking history. The monthly transfers to Dad's account. Labeled mortgage like clockwork. I scrolled back. Month after month. $700, $750, $800. Over 2 years of payments. I did some quick math. My stomach flipped. More than $17,000, but the mortgage. They said they needed help paying the house off, that it was our family home, that I was investing in our future. So why had I never seen a statement? A cold thought crawled up the back of my neck. I opened another tab and searched the county property records, the address, the lien history. It took a while to sort through, but when I did, something didn't add up. The mortgage had been paid off 4 years ago. 4 years, long before I'd started transferring money. I stared at the screen, my breath stuck somewhere between a laugh and a scream. They lied. Not just about respect, not just about love. They took my money, month after month, and they let me believe it was going to something real, something shared. But it hadn't been. I pressed a hand to my chest. Had I been paying into their spending money? The designer purse Mom found on sale. The new golf clubs Dad said were a gift from work. The restaurant takeout I was never invited to eat. I wasn't just cut off from the family. I had been funding their lifestyle. The betrayal hit me like a second eviction, only this time it wasn't from their house. It was from the lie I'd been living inside. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my laptop, bank statements, and a growing sense of fire in my gut. They didn't just dismiss me. They used me. And I had proof. I opened a new document and began typing. Not out of revenge, not out of spite, but because truth deserved a home too. And I was done living in lies. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I texted Gus that I needed a day for personal matters. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Handle it, kid." So I showered, dressed in my best no-nonsense clothes, and caught the city bus to the branch where I'd been sending my monthly payments. I'd walked past it 1,000 times before, never thinking I'd need to ask questions there. But today, I wasn't just a daughter or an ex-tenant. I was a customer. I walked up to the teller with my head high. "Hi," I said, laying out my ID. "I'm trying to understand the history of some monthly payments I've been making. I believe they were mortgage contributions, but I have questions about where they actually ended up." The young woman blinked, confused, then motioned me toward a cubicle where a man in a tie introduced himself as Paul. I repeated myself. He tapped away on his keyboard, then asked for the account number. I gave him my father's. Yes, I remembered it. I'd been typing it into my banking app every month for years. Paul's brow furrowed. "This account is a personal checking account. Are you sure this is related to a mortgage?" The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I nodded, calm despite the fury starting to rumble beneath my skin. "My parents told me the money I sent monthly went directly to the house mortgage. I've been paying for over 2 years. He hesitated, then turned his monitor slightly. "Well, based on what I see here, none of these funds went to any loan accounts. In fact, there's no mortgage affiliated with this account at all. And it appears the mortgage on that property was paid in full back in 2019, 4 years ago." I felt dizzy. Even though I'd already seen the county record, hearing it confirmed by a stranger with records made it real. "Can you tell me," I asked carefully, "what the payments were used for?" He adjusted his glasses, eyes scanning the screen. "I'm not authorized to give you details of the account owner's purchases, but based on the transaction codes, I can confirm the funds went toward retail stores, restaurants, and various miscellaneous withdrawals, not any loan institution." My stomach churned. They hadn't just lied. They'd spent my money on themselves, not to keep a roof over our heads, but on new shoes, steak dinners, spa days. Paul must have seen the look on my face because his voice softened. "If you need transaction records for legal purposes, we can issue a printout for any deposit you personally made." "Please," I said. "Every one of them." It took half an hour, but when I left the bank, I held a thick envelope of printed statements in my hands, highlighted with every payment I'd sent. Dates, amounts, references, my name beside each line. Not one dime went to the mortgage, not one. By the time I stepped off the bus and walked back into my apartment, my hands were shaking. But not from sadness, from clarity. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined it. They'd told me I wasn't pulling my weight, that I owed them, that they were doing me a favor by letting me live at home, all while using the money I earned flipping burgers to buy themselves luxuries they never offered me. And I'd kept apologizing, trying harder, working longer. For what? I sat at my tiny folding table, pulled out a pen, and underlined one line from the envelope. $750 deposit from Emma Ward reference. Mortgage August, below that, the transaction. $312 Nordstrom. $98 Spa Luxe. $40 DoorDash. $300 ATM withdrawal. In one day. The same day I skipped dinner because I couldn't afford groceries. My hands were still trembling, but something inside me was hardening, too. Something deep and strong and long overdue. This wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine. I opened my laptop again, added a new tab to the document I'd started the night before, and titled it, "Record of Misused Funds 2021 to Present." They wanted me to be quiet, to be grateful. They underestimated me. It came 2 days later. I just got home from a long shift, my apron slung over a dining chair, when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with his name, Dad. I hadn't heard a word from them since I walked out. No calls, no messages, no Lily hovering in the doorway, just silence. Until now, the message was short, sharp, arrogant. "Why have the payments stopped? You owe us, Emma. Don't think you can just run off and leave your responsibilities behind. We need to talk." I stared at the words like they were in another language. It felt unreal. He still thought he had power over me, still believed the lie that I owed them. My first instinct was to ignore it, block the number, shut the door on that chapter. But no, not this time. Because this wasn't just about defending myself. This was about truth, about looking them in the eye and not flinching. I took a slow breath, sat at my little table with the chipped blue coffee mug, and typed back. "I've reviewed my bank records and confirmed that the money I sent never went to the mortgage. I have documentation showing where it went instead. I'll be coming by tomorrow with copies. We need to talk." I hit send before I could think twice. No more hiding. No more guilt. No more silence wrapped in shame. That night I barely slept. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. I went over the documents 3 times, making extra copies, organizing them neatly into labeled folders. My hands were steady, my mind sharp. I was building my own version of justice, one spreadsheet, one receipt at a time. The next day, I dressed carefully. Not flashy, not dramatic. Just clean jeans, a tucked-in blouse, and the kind of calm that says, I am not afraid of you anymore. Becca offered to come with me. I can wait in the car or sit on their porch with popcorn. I smiled, touched, but I needed to do this alone. The walk up their front steps was strangely quiet. The house looked the same, peeling paint on the shutters that chipped ceramic frogs still by the flower bed, but I was different. I knocked once. Mom opened the door, her eyes widened just slightly, then narrowed. So you're finally back. I'm not back, I said evenly. I'm here to talk. She stepped aside. Your father's in the kitchen. Of course he was, where all our worst conversations lived. I walked in and set the folders down on the table, one marked deposits, another transaction records, and a third titled simply, Truth. Dad was sitting with a glass of water and a scowl. What's this? He grumbled. Documentation, I said, keeping my voice even. Proof that every dollar I sent didn't go to the mortgage, because the mortgage has been paid off for 4 years. He looked at the folders but didn't touch them. That's none of your business. I met his gaze, unblinking. It was my business when I was sending you $750 a month under the lie that it was paying down the house. Mom folded her arms. We didn't lie, we just used it differently. Without telling me, I snapped. Without asking, without respect. Dad waved a hand. Don't act like we didn't take care of you. You didn't take care of me, I said. I took care of you. While you took my money and spent it on spas and shopping and steak. I have the receipts, literally. I opened the folders and slid them toward him. Mom flinched when she saw the first page. Dad's mouth opened, then shut, but it was Lily's voice that broke the silence. She'd been standing at the top of the stairs. None of us had noticed. What do you mean the mortgage is paid off? She asked, her voice small. I turned to her. Exactly what I said. The mortgage was paid off before I ever started paying. They used the money I sent for their own spending. Her face paled. She looked at Dad. Is that true? He didn't answer. Lily's eyes welled up. She descended the stairs slowly, like she didn't recognize the place anymore. I thought I was helping too, she whispered. All this time I defended you guys. Mom looked stricken. Lily, honey, this isn't about you. Yes, it is, she said sharply. It's about all of us. You made Emma feel like she was selfish. You made me think she was just dramatic. But you lied. She looked at me then, really looked. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know. I nodded once, tight-lipped. Now you do. Lily stepped beside me, and just like that, it was 2 against 2. The room shifted. Dad finally spoke. Quiet but bitter. So what now? You want the money back? I met his stare with calm fire. I want acknowledgement. I want you to stop pretending like I abandoned this family. You cut me out the second I stopped being profitable. And I won't be part of that dynamic anymore. Mom sat down slowly, suddenly looking very tired. I don't know what happened to you, she said, but this attitude. I picked up my folders. What happened? I woke up. Then I turned to Lily. You coming? She hesitated only a second, then nodded. We walked out together. Behind us, silence. Ahead of us, everything else. Lily didn't say anything for the first 10 blocks. We walked in silence, side by side, her earbuds shoved deep into her jacket pocket, her steps uneven like her thoughts. I didn't push. I knew that silence well. I'd lived in it for years, learned to read its weight, its waiting. When we reached the corner near the park, she finally spoke. You really weren't lying. It wasn't a question, just something she needed to say out loud to herself. No, I said softly. She stopped walking, turned toward me, cheeks flushed from the wind or maybe shame. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, she whispered. I thought you were being dramatic, selfish. Mom said you were always making it about yourself. I believed her. I nodded, letting the truth settle between us. I know, I said. I used to believe her too. She looked down at her sneakers like they might explain the world. They told me the money was for the house, that if you didn't help, we'd lose it. I remember crying once because I thought we'd be homeless. I begged them to ask you for more. That hit harder than anything they'd ever said. I reached for her hand. She let me. You were a kid, I said. You were doing what they taught you to do, believe them. She looked up at me. But you didn't, I shrugged. Not at first, I just got tired of the guilt, the pressure, the feeling that nothing I did was ever enough. You can't win when the rules keep changing. She was quiet for a moment, then I thought if I kept siding with them, they'd treat me better. I gave her a small, knowing smile. Did they? Laughed, but it cracked down the middle. No, they just made me the new project, same expectations, same manipulation. I guess I got the promotion. We sat on a bench under the bare branches of an old oak tree, the cold seeping into our jeans, but the air between us felt warmer somehow. Lily fiddled with her sleeve. What happens now? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm not going back, and I'm not letting them write the narrative anymore. She nodded slowly. I don't want to either. I turned toward her. You can crash at my place just until you figure out your next step. It's tiny, but there's floor space and extra ramen. Her eyes widened. Really? You're still my sister, I said, and you're choosing something different. That matters. She wiped her nose with her sleeve, then smirked. Do I have to do chores? I laughed. Only if you want to keep the good pillow. We stood and began walking again, this time slower, lighter. She looked sideways at me. Do you think they'll ever admit what they did? I exhaled. Maybe, or maybe they'll rewrite it in their heads until they believe they were right all along. Lily nodded. Yeah, that sounds about right. We crossed the street, the diner glowing in the distance, a familiar beacon. I always thought family meant sticking it out no matter what, she said. So did I replied. But maybe it means something else, like choosing the people who actually see you. We walked on in silence again, but this time it was the good kind, the kind that holds space instead of swallowing it. Later that night, we lay side by side in the studio, me on the mattress, Lily on the armchair with a blanket tucked around her like armor. The heater rattled. The fridge hummed. And neither of us felt like we were trespassing in our own lives. 3 days passed before the doorbell rang. Lily and I were on the floor eating cereal straight from the box, watching a terrible home renovation show with smug judges and people crying over backsplash tiles. We weren't doing much, just being. Quietly, together. The buzz startled both of us. Lily looked at me. You expecting someone? I shook my head. I opened the door with caution, half expecting a neighbor, maybe Becca with coffee and drama. But it was them. Mom stood rigid, her coat too formal for the weather. Dad next to her, looking older than I remembered, even though it had only been a week. Neither of them spoke right away. Behind me, Lily had risen silently. I could feel her there, not touching me but near. We'd like to come in, Mom said at last. I hesitated. I didn't need anything from them. Not anymore. But then I remembered what Lily had said. Do you think they'll ever admit what they did? I stepped aside. They sat stiffly on the folding chairs by the table like guests at a stranger's wake. Dad cleared his throat. We've been talking. Mom glanced at the ceiling as if hoping it would do the hard part for her. We read everything, she said. The papers you left, the bank records. I waited. Dad swallowed. You were right, the money, it didn't go where we said it would. And, I asked. We were scared, Mom said, her voice sharp like she was pulling teeth. Of losing control, of losing you. You never had me, I said gently. You had my labor, my loyalty, not me, she winced. We got used to you being the one who kept things afloat, Dad added. And when you started to pull away, we panicked. We didn't know how to let you grow without feeling like we were losing something. You didn't lose me, I said. You pushed me out. Silence. Then Mom reached into her purse and pulled out a small checkbook. She scrawled on it, tore the slip, and set it on the table between us. $17,000, she looked at me. We added up what we spent, what you sent. We want to return it. I blinked. My chest tightened, but not with rage, with relief, not because of the money, but because finally they saw it, the truth I had carried alone. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said. I'm doing it so I can live without resentment, so I can heal. Lily stepped forward then, arms folded. You hurt both of us, she said, but at least now you're not pretending you didn't. Dad nodded. We'll respect your boundaries. From now on, we mean that. I looked at them, two people who once made me feel small in a house I paid to stay in. They weren't villains, just scared, flawed people who didn't know how to love without controlling. And maybe that was their tragedy to carry, not mine. I accepted the check, not because I needed the money, but because accepting it meant I was finally done trying to earn their approval. They stood, thanked me quietly, and left. The door clicked shut. Lily looked at me. How do you feel? I looked around at my little studio. The chipped mug, the folded laundry, the quiet hum of a heater that didn't judge me. Free, I said. And a little hungry. We laughed. A week later, we used part of the money to buy a second-hand sofa. Nothing fancy, just something soft, wide enough for movie nights, and covered in a color Lily swore was earthy but looked like moss to me. Becca helped us haul it in and stayed for takeout and stories. We were building something here, something honest, something ours. And every time I looked at the lock on my door, I remembered this space wasn't earned through sacrifice, it was claimed through truth. On my terms, at last. Closing narration to viewers, what would you do if your own family exploited your loyalty? Would you walk away? Would you fight back? Would you find your freedom in a space no one could take from you? Let me know in the comments, because sometimes our biggest betrayal comes from those closest. But so does the courage to start again. If you felt this story, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, freedom starts with you.